Have you ever caught yourself wondering, am I really being me right now? Is this me, or is this just that version of me that I think everybody else expects? Like maybe at work, or with your family, or maybe with yourself when you look in the mirror. That moment where you ask, am I living as my authentic self, or am I just running the script?
Yeah, and you know what? That's a huge question, right? I mean, because authenticity has become this crazy buzzword everywhere. You see it in Instagram bios, in leadership books, hell, even in job interviews. Everybody's talking about being authentic. But, I mean, what does that actually mean? And really, maybe more importantly, what does it not mean?
Yeah, authenticity isn't about being nice all the time or being agreeable or even being brutally honest. It goes way deeper than that. It's about congruence. It's about living in alignment with your truest self. And that takes some serious intentionality and a whole lot of practice, which honestly is harder than it sounds.
All right, so in this two-part series, we're going to break it down. Today in part one, we'll start by asking, what is the authentic self? How do psychologists and therapists and thought leaders define it? And then we'll discuss the gap, that difference between who we are at our core and the persona that we present to the world. In part two, we'll get really practical. How do you actually practice authenticity daily? And what happens when you don't?
Yeah, so if you've ever felt the tension between who you are and who you want to be, or if you're ever just tired of performing life, then stick around. That's what we're going to unpack, is what it really means to find, own, and practice your authentic self.
All right, let's get into it.
Welcome to the Nature of Everything podcast with Bo and Clint, where we deep dive into the world of personal development through coin. Confirm it, own it, be intentional, and change the nature of everything.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Nature of Everything podcast. I'm Bo.
Hey, and I'm Clint. And if you've been with us for any time at all, this is where we dig into personal development, and we do it through coin. And that's our framework that stands for confirm it, own it, be intentional, and change the nature of everything.
Yeah, coin started as just a way that Clint and I would work through our own mess. The daily conversations that we've been having for, I guess, decades now. We're spring chickens. We realized that it wasn't just helping us. It was shaping how we saw ourselves and our relationships and how we saw work, really everything. And so now we decided to share it with you.
And if you've been here, like I said, for any time at all, you already know this is more than just a podcast to us. It's a practice. We even wrote a book about it. It's called Confirm It, Own It, Be Intentional, and Change the Nature of Everything in Your Life. And you can grab it at coinyourlife.com.
All right, so let's just get right into it. The authentic self. That sounds really fancy, but it's really just being you. It's being comfortable in your own skin. It's that feeling that you're not pretending, that you're not putting on a show, and you're not exhausted from holding up some kind of persona. You're just you. And that's a lot harder than it sounds.
Absolutely, because let's be honest, most of us have this highlight reel version of ourselves. And that's what we try to put out there. The Instagram bios are a perfect example, like dad, husband, worker, Christian, whatever. Don't get me wrong, those are fine, but realistically, they're labels. They don't tell you the why or the how. Why, dad? How, son? And maybe even where are you a worker? But if you never go deeper than the labels, I think that you end up mistaking the surface for your actual core.
Yeah, and here's the truth bomb. Nobody else can tell if you're being authentic. Only you know. You know when you're showing up as the real self, and you know when you're kind of faking it. You feel it in your gut. And when you fake it long enough, it's going to get heavy.
Which is actually what psychologists have been saying for decades. Donald Winnicott. He's a fancy British psychoanalyst. But he says that, you have a true self and a false self. And the true self is creative, and it's alive, and it's spontaneous. But the false self, it's a mask. And it's the role you play so people like you. Or at least they don't yell at you or whatever. So let's be real. That mask, don't get me wrong, it can be useful. Sometimes you got to play nice at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah, you do.
But realistically, if you live behind the mask all the time, dude, it's exhausting.
And Carl Rogers, another big name in psychology, would call that being out of congruence, when your insides and your outsides don't match. And you know exactly what that feels like. It's when you say yes, but you really mean no. It's when you smile, but inside you're frustrated. And it's when you walk away from a conversation thinking, dang it, I didn't show up as me at all.
Yeah, and what's crazy is research today, it still backs all of that up. Like when you actually act like yourself, when you let the inside match the outside like you're talking about, I mean, your mental health literally improves. You're less stressed, you're more resilient, and honestly, I think you're just happier. It's like your whole system breathes easier when you're not acting all the time.
So, yeah, authentic self isn't just some fluffy, be real slogan. It's energy and it's clarity and it's the foundation for everything else that we're going to talk about. But there's a catch. Most of us live somewhere between our authentic self and our persona. And that in-between space, that's the gap. And that's where the work really happens. And it reminds me of something that hit me not long ago. I was asked to write a personal bio. And on the surface, that sounded simple. But honestly, it unnerved me. Because what people really want in a bio is a list, like your job titles and your roles and that highlight reel that Clint was talking about. And yeah, I can write all that. But when I looked at it, it felt flat. It didn't feel like me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, great. Your resume is impressive, but you know what? That doesn't tell me anything about who you actually are.
Yeah. And here's the kicker. Some of the parts of me that I don't usually put in the bio are actually the ones that shape me the most. Losing people I loved, or walking through a medical crisis, or going through a divorce. Like, I don't like talking about those things. I never want them to become a crutch to me or to make people feel sorry for me, or honestly, even for me to feel sorry for myself. But without those pieces, again, I'm kind of flat. And honestly, if I don't share them, then I'm not really being seen.
And there's a lot of gravity to that, because that's the difference between the persona and authenticity. Like, the persona says, like we said, here's my highlight reel. Now please clap, like give me applause for that, right?
Slow clap.
But your authentic self says, yeah, here's the real story. Here are the wins and the wounds. And you know what? Both are equally important. Because here's the thing, authenticity isn't about turning pain into your entire identity, but it's also not about pretending it never happened. It's about owning it without letting it, truly own you.
Yeah, and that's what I realized. That if I only share the polished parts of me, I'm not actually being authentic. I'm just curating a cool version of me. And the more that I do that, the more that I feel like I'm living someone else's life instead of my own.
Yeah, and it's a trap, right? Because authenticity gets watered down to mean just being nice or just to be honest. But authenticity isn't always nice, and it's not always comfortable. Sometimes being authentic means saying the hard things. Sometimes it means admitting the actual struggle that you have. Sometimes it even means disappointing people. But what it always means is that it's being real.
Yeah, you're right. It's not about being agreeable or pleasant 24/7. It's not about being trustworthy on paper or always telling the unfiltered truth like some blunt force hammer. We all know those people.
Sure.
And it's definitely not like just a list of your roles and your labels. That's persona. That's the mask. And honestly, living in that mask too long is just exhausting.
And there again, that's the gap. That space between who we actually are and the version we put out there for the world. And everybody's got one. And you know what? Realistically, the bigger the gap, I believe the more drained you probably feel. Because keeping that persona alive takes way more energy than just living as your authentic self.
Which is wild, right? Because
Sure.
You'd think that authenticity would be harder, but it's actually the mask that is exhausting.
Certainly.
Like, here's the thing. Most of us don't ditch the mask overnight. It's not about burning your whole life down in the name of being real. It's about noticing the gap and owning it and practicing authenticity one step at a time.
Yeah, and that's where intentionality comes in. Nature and nurture, they give us our defaults, like our personality, our family history, our upbringing. But with intentionality, we can rewrite some of those scripts. We don't have to live by this mask forever. Like, we can start practicing authenticity until, I don't know, it feels more natural than the persona.
And we'll get into the how part next week in part 2. But for now, let that sink in. Authenticity isn't about perfection or about always being pleasant. It's about congruence. When your insides and your outsides match, and the truth is, only you know if you're truly being authentic. And that's why it's so important to confirm it, to own it, and then to live it out with intention.
All right, so let's push this forward. If authenticity is congruence, then how do we practice it? Because it, like you mentioned, it's not a one-time decision. It's not like you wake up one day and boom, forever, I'm authentic now. It doesn't work that way. It is a practice, and it does take reps. It takes that repetition, just like anything else does. That, I mean, if it's worth learning, it takes the repetitions.
Yeah, and that sucks. Because, I mean, here's the deal. Authenticity, it's not a switch that you just flip. Like you said, you don't wake up one day and announce to the world, like, I am now authentic. And boom, you're done. Like, I wish it worked like that.
Yeah,
but
sure.
It's a practice. And like any practice, some days you nail it. And some days you miss it. And some days you're just tired.
Yeah, I mean, actually, being tired, I think that's a big one. That's a big one to consider. You know, it's amazing how quickly exhaustion makes us default back to, you know, your old patterns. You know, you can have the best intentions, but if you're actually just running on fumes, your authentic self absolutely can take a nap and your autopilot. These old patterns, they seem to just take over too many times.
Yeah, and that's why we love the idea of practice instead of discipline. Mm-hmm. Discipline feels heavy. It's like it's punishment. But practice feels human. So it means that you're working at it. So when you slip, it's not failure, it's feedback. And the more you practice, the stronger your authentic self gets to be.
And here's the kicker. Guess what? You're going to mess it up. You're going to have those moments where you put the mask back on and where you almost sort of betray yourself in these small ways. And we recognize that. We even consider those to be micro betrayals. It's those little moments when you ignore your own nudge. Like, you wanted to speak up, but then you stayed quiet, or you needed rest, but you just kept on pushing and pushing. They seem small, but all of those things are stackable and they add up.
Yeah, and when they pile up, that's when you feel heavy or disconnected or stuck or just tired. But the flip side is true too. The more that you notice those moments and you confirm them and you make small intentional choices, the lighter you feel. That's the practice. It's not perfection. It's just practice.
Yeah, which, you know what, it actually gives me hope, because authenticity doesn't demand that we're flawless. I mean, thank God. It just asks that we show up, you know, over and over, like again and again and again, aligning our insides with our outsides. And over time, that intentional consistency, it truly changes the whole game.
Yeah, and look, that's where we're going to land part 1. Authenticity as a practice. Not a label, definitely not a vibe, but a daily repetition of being you on purpose. And in part 2, we're going to dig into the practical side and how to actually live this out and how to rewrite your defaults and how to close the gap between who you are and who you want to be. But right now, we're just going to talk about part 1. And you know what's funny? Sometimes people hear authentic self and they picture this like Zen master who's always calm and grounded and always centered. But let's be real. Authenticity, it doesn't look like a yoga pose on a mountaintop somewhere. Sometimes it looks like saying the wrong thing and then admitting it. Sometimes it looks like catching yourself halfway through people pleasing and thinking to yourself, like, dang it, I'm doing it again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, like, it just goes without saying, authenticity is still not about being flawless, but it is about being congruent. And that word is so important. It's about being congruent. And I get it. Like, maybe congruence in this sense, maybe it doesn't look sexy, but it's solid. And it's the difference between being the polished version of yourself and being the real one. And if you've ever had someone say, man, you just seem different lately. I don't know, you seem lighter or more real or happier. It's probably because you've had a practice in authenticity, whether you were conscious of it or not, whether you knew you were doing it or not. you were probably putting it into play.
Yeah. And you know what? And let's be honest, sometimes authenticity is not comfortable. Sometimes being authentic is just, it's going to cost you something. Like you might disappoint someone, or you might lose an opportunity, or you might even have to admit like, hey, I've been lying to myself for a long time, and that's scary. Or you might have to look at somebody else and say, you know what, I've kind of been lying to you for a long time. But it's also freeing because pretending is so much more expensive in the long run.
Sure. And again, that's huge because, again, let's not kid ourselves. Your persona, it has its perks. I mean, you get the applause that you're looking for. You probably get the approval that you're seeking. I don't know, maybe you get promotions. But like you said, I mean, there's a cost and it's pretty expensive on the backside. The price tag, the price is you. The more you live outside of your alignment, the more you dodge this congruence, the more you pay in stress or resentment, I don't know, health issues. And at some point you have to ask yourself, is this truly worth it?
Yeah, and that's where practice really matters, because it's not about just tearing off the mask once and for all and you're done.
Sure.
It's about learning to notice when it's creeping back on. And instead of beating yourself up, you just practice stepping back into your authenticity, and you're going to practice it again and again. And look, here's the easiest way I know to spot a gap. You pay attention to when you're feeling drained versus when you feel alive. If you walk out of a room and you're just exhausted, maybe you were performing. Maybe you were holding up that persona. But if you leave the room and you feel lighter, even if the conversation was tough, that's authenticity, and that's congruence.
Dude, that's so true. I mean, think about it. How many times have we both been in situations where, like you mentioned, this performance, I mean, it feels like work. You can almost like feel the muscles in your face hurting from like putting on the fake smiles for too long. And then compare that to when you're with the people that you can just be with. It's night and day difference. And it's not accidental. It truly is night and day difference. That's the energy difference between that masked persona, and what authenticity feels like.
Yeah, and here's the cool part. Your body knows before your brain does. Like, you can feel authenticity. You can feel when you're aligned. It's the difference between tension and ease, between grinding and flowing. And when you catch that, you can start to name it and you can confirm it. And that's step one of coin right there.
Exactly. And that's why it's worth spending like this whole first part just simply naming it. Because once again, if you can't name it, then you can't face it. And you certainly can't own it. And if you can't own it, you can't change it. I mean, so today it really is about the awareness of this and understanding what authenticity really is, and again, what it is not, and why that truly matters.
All right, so look, let's put a bow, no pun intended, haha. Let's put a bow on part one. Like, we've talked about what authenticity is and what it's not, being pleasant or just being the nice guy. And we've talked about the gap between the persona and the real self. And while living out of alignment actually makes you feel like you just ran a marathon in skinny jeans.
Which you might have to tell me what that's about, because I didn't do it. I've never run, for the listeners, I've never run a marathon, and I damn sure didn't do it in skinny jeans. But for your point, I'm sure that's exactly what that anxiety would feel like.
It is. Like, authenticity, it's practice. It's not perfection. You don't get a gold star for nailing it. You just get more energy and less resentment. And that's way better than a sticker chart.
I don't know. I mean, it might be a really good sticker. I'm just saying. Like, do you remember those holographic dinosaurs? Whatever. I'm just saying, I might be tempted by one of those.
That's a fair point. But look, if you want more than Clint's dinosaur stickers, then go check out the coin book. Confirm it, own it, be intentional, and change the nature of everything in your life. Go to coinyourlife.com and grab a copy.
Plus, please, if you're not already following us on socials, look up Coin Your Life, and that's where we keep this conversation going. And we provide some daily inspiration, and we kind of explore pieces and parts of the book. We just get out there and follow us.
Yeah, so here's your homework for this week. Just notice where you feel alive versus where you feel drained. That's usually evidence of the gap between your authentic self and your persona. And we'll pick it up next week with part 2, where we're going to get really practical about how to close that gap and how to start living more congruently.
And until then, hey, keep practicing, keep coining, stay in the mix, and try not to run a marathon in skinny jeans like Bo you do. Just trust me, you don't want to do it.
I dig it.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to check out coinyourlife.com and find us on social media.